rushing to replace the people is not always the best answer, but using technology to empower your people can create an incredible experience. It can also help you potentially reduce some costs. And so if you're trying to say, you know what, our customer service team, they're certainly important, but always like to spend less on things like that. There are tools that can help you. There are companies that can help you. Investigate those, but understand what your ultimate goals are. What is the reason that you're investigating this? Is it just to save money? Are you trying to improve customer experience? Are you trying to cut costs, drive revenue? What is it? Because knowing that will help you make the right decision, or at least a decision that aligns with what you're trying to accomplish. I think far too often people make decisions that aren't actually in alignment with what they're trying to accomplish.
You're listening to RevOps Champions, a podcast created for B2B leaders to help you align your people, streamline your processes, trust your data, and leverage technology in order to grow your business. We're your hosts, Brendan Denewell, CEO and co-founder of Dynamico,
and Amy Weaver, Dynamico's marketing director.
What is the role that the contact center plays in the customer experience? But where does it really start? Who's responsible for customer experience? And then, because I think everybody who knows a little bit about the space is like, ultimately you wouldn't have a contact center because the product or the service would be so great, you wouldn't need anyone to, and if anything, you want the contact center to get smaller, not bigger. But
yeah.
So how do you differentiate between customer experience, customer satisfaction, contact center, and anything else that might come up?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think ultimately, your contact center is part of your overall customer experience, but it's not the customer experience, like the CX, right? That's the term that everybody likes to use.
It's like a touch point.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely a touch point. It's a critical touch point, and one that gives you a lot of feedback that you may not get with other touch points. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so critical. But customer experience, there are companies that don't have contact centers. And that doesn't mean they don't have a customer experience. If they have a product or a service, then there is a customer. If they have customers, there's an experience there.
They're experiencing.
And that experience encompasses really everything they know about the company. It encompasses their emotions. It encompasses their attitude, how they feel about your brand, which is part and parcel to NPS.
Mm-hmm.
But every touch point along the way helps inform how they feel about that and how they experience your brand. The contact center is critical, though, because it's the one where you often have an opportunity for service recovery. It's the one that happens when something goes wrong. And inevitably, things go wrong because no one's perfect. And so that's the touch point where you have an opportunity to really take a bad situation or a dissatisfied customer or confused customer or whatever they are. They're not ecstatic about you in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And turn them into a brand ambassador, turn them into someone who goes, this company, they're amazing. This is why I called or I chatted or I emailed or whatever channel I chose. And this was how they handled that situation. I love it because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Raving fans. We talked to another guest about creating raving fans, and this is a good opportunity to do that. Could you help me understand quickly how you are the VP of customer engagement at two companies full time?
Yeah. I mean, they're sister companies. Happitu actually spun out of Customer Direct. I've had a really unique journey, I think. I got into the contact center business with Convergys, which is now Concentrix. It's one of the largest BPOs in the world. And I got into training very quickly after being an agent for them. This was after I left Minneapolis. I needed a pivot. And that pivot, I didn't think this was the greatest career move in the world for me, but I needed a job. And so I I started in our retention department for one of the big three cell phone companies in the US that Convergys supported. And I started training, and then I got an opportunity to do some leadership development for them. And so I was traveling all over the country to different sites and outside of the US, supporting sites, training and supporting site leadership, all the way from the frontline team leaders all the way up to the site director. Then I had an opportunity to come to Customer Direct, which was a very different proposition. It was a family-owned boutique contact center, much smaller, based in St. Louis. And, their whole operation was smaller than a lot of the projects that a Convergys would have. And it allowed me to see the contact center in a little bit different light because I got to understand what a shared agent was, which was wildly different to me. It was like taking phone calls for all these different brands back to back. And I was like, how do you do that? And it's through technology. It's through tools to help agents understand what call's coming in, how do I answer this call, and what process do I follow to resolve this customer's concern. And I led the training department. Eventually, I took over quality. And in 2020, we were getting ready to go to market with a solution that we had at the time. It was just called Happitu. It was a rebuild of a scripting solution that we had been using internally for about 20 years. And
scripts for the agents to use on the calls?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was how the agents knew what to say on the call, because literally we have agents that might have a dozen different skills. So literally they might be taking a hotel reservation and then talking to someone about an insurance claim because they've got water damage on their floor. And then the next thing they know, they're trying to get somebody connected to Wi-Fi. And then the next thing you know, they're placing an order for some scrubs for a nurse or a doctor, like just all these different things.
Wild.
So the way that we support the agents internally is with this software. So as soon as the call comes in, they get a screen pop and it walks them through the entire interaction. It tells them what to say, what the process is. Here are the tools that they need to use to effectively help this particular customer. And when we rebuilt that, we decided that we were going to try and take that to market. And I had been a big part of the evaluation process. We're testing it internally, a lot of feedback. And somebody decided that I would make a good kind of lead in this particular aspect. And so they asked me, would I be interested in leading this effort? And because it was 2020, and even though our agents had gone work from home, I was now working from home. A lot of our partners were impacted. I actually thought when that call came in, I thought I was getting laid off.
Wow.
That's really what I thought. My boss called me one of those unscheduled meetings, and I thought, oh boy, here it comes. And instead, it was an offer to do something really different than what I had done before. And so I jumped at the chance. And through that process, we actually stumbled on doing something entirely different, trying to solve a problem for one of our potential customers who thought he wanted what we were doing. And I was like, no, please don't do this. This is bad. Your people will hate you. The scripting just wasn't the right answer for what he wanted. But what we ended up doing was getting in between and recording his calls for him. And then as a proof of concept, we started transcribing them. And then we made them searchable, and we started doing some analysis, and we recognized, hey, this is a real thing. We can do this. And so today we have a couple of products, but our flagship product is our conversational analytics product, which ingests calls, chats, does sentiment analysis, provides all kinds of insights to contact centers about why customers are calling, how agents are performing, what friction points there are in whatever processes that the company has. Yeah, so it's been pretty exciting to be there. So today I kind of work both on the contact center side. I'm a lot less involved these days, but I'd still do some things on that side. And then I also am like this brand ambassador / evangelist for Happitu and the products that we have there.
So that was almost like a precursor to something. I mean, so you were doing a lot of stuff that a lot of these new AI note taker tools are doing more, again, on the front end of the sales or buying process, right? Like we, for example, use Fathom, and I know that's an extremely popular tool. It's funny how quickly suddenly things move towards AI in the conversation nowadays, but which is not our objective. But how has this, in the last 15 months, AI has just come out of nowhere, really? I mean, not really nowhere, but
it has.
How has that impacted, your product or business, or how do you think your product has actually essentially been a precursor to some of these AI tools?
Well, I mean, I can tell you right off the bat, the one thing it's done is it has changed how we approach, how we're analyzing all of these interactions with customers. Large language models are absolutely the future. They still have challenges, don't get me wrong. There are lots of challenges inherent with them. I feel like they're not ready for like customer facing applications. I actually recently wrote an article about this that was published with ICMI. And there are just so many examples of it going wrong with customers. And the reason is that customers like to test the limits. They like to push and see what they can get this AI to spit out back at them. But on the back end for the business, where the business isn't doing that, what the business really wants are actionable insights. They want information quickly. They want it distilled into the things that are most important to them. It actually works really, really well. It's very accurate, and it can be really cost effective. And so we had been using different types of models to achieve a lot of the insights that we've been delivering. And we've quickly found that large language models are faster, more powerful, easier to work with, and more flexible. They can do a lot of different things that previously we might have used like 3 different tools for these 3 different things. Now we can use really one tool to accomplish all 3 of those things. So it's changed our development strategy quite a bit, and continues to drive innovation and new features that we can release within the product without us having to tack on extra costs. And I think that is one of the things that we've been really hyper focused on is we want to deliver value, and our target market is small and medium businesses. We don't really play in the enterprise space. We can scale to that big. We'll support enterprise companies, but they're coming from a boutique contact center that focused on small and medium businesses. We love having the kind of impact that you can have with those smaller businesses because we get to work really closely with them. And it really is amazing to see the kind of results that you can get. And they feel ignored. They feel ignored by most of these players who look at them and go, you're just too small for us, right? It's not worth the effort for us. And when we talk to them, we get them excited about what they can gain from this. And so there's a lot of satisfaction that goes into that, and being able to help those businesses really, that's what gets us up in the morning.
Cool. Rob, I guess so now that we've been talking, a lot about, so we always, break the revenue team into the 3 parts. We've talked, marketing, sales, and service. What are the things sort of now moving from customer service, customer success back over to their colleagues in sales and marketing? What do you think customer success or customer service teams need? And I guess maybe to clarify, so you were talking about small and medium-sized businesses. We're focused more on the medium-sized businesses. So our clients are typically between 100 and 1,000 employees. And I know medium is a very wide space. And I'm sure you have clients or customers in that space too. But if just with that in mind, though, with sort of companies that are maybe 100 employees plus, where, as you said earlier, every company has customer service, it might just be provided by different people who are doing more than one job or what have you. If a company does have a customer service function and therefore team, what needs to happen across sales and marketing and maybe product too, but I'd prefer to stay within the customer-facing team if possible. For customer service to be successful, what needs to happen with their colleagues in sales and marketing?
I mean, it's really simple. Communication. And I can tell you as someone whose background is in the outsource world, right? You are dealing with a lot of different companies that all have these different sales and marketing efforts and agendas. Being able to forecast, being able to know what's coming, being able to articulate and to answer questions about what's coming is so critical. If you've got a promotion that's going out via email blast and it's going out to 10,000 customers,
absolutely.
Guess who needs to know about that? I mean, your customer service team needs to know about that because they're the ones who are going to get hit with all of the volume, whether it's chats or phone calls. People will call with questions. They'll call to place orders, whatever the case may be. And number one, if workforce doesn't know that influx of volume is coming, it's going to create a horrible experience for both agents and for the customers, because the customers are going to sit on hold if they're phone calls, or they're just going to sit staring at this chat that goes, "We'll be with you in a moment." And that's not what anybody wants to do. I don't care how great your customer service is. Nobody goes, "Oh, geez, I can't wait to call and sit on hold in this queue for 20 minutes while I wait to talk to an agent." They're calling for a reason. They're calling because they don't have all the answers or all the information that they feel like they need. And they want that quickly. So being able to staff appropriately ensures that we get to them quickly. Having that communication to the agents who are going to be fielding these inquiries allows them to be empowered to have answers that they're going to be asked. They're going to have questions, and it happens. It doesn't matter how detailed you put it in the email that's going out. People call and they still have questions because they aren't confident in the information they're reading, or it's a little bit vague, or
they just didn't read the whole email.
Yes.
In the case of my husband, a lot of times.
It happens all the time.
We literally got an email the other day that was like, just to sign up for your, whatever it was, lawn maintenance for the year, call this number or pay by this. And he responds to the email with like, "Okay, how do I pay to start our thing?" And I was like, "Honey,
got to read the next line." Yeah.
It says it right there.
That is a average husband behavior, I think. I'm sure I'm guilty of that as well.
You guys have a lot of husbands calling in.
Yes, absolutely. It's human nature, I think, that we don't always either want to spend the time, or our expectation is the answer is not going to be there because we've been trained over years that we get incomplete information and then we need to go in and have to ask questions, or we assume that there's some catch to it. There's just all kinds of reasons that are unique to both the individual and the type of communication that it is, or the type of product or service that it is. I can tell you for the last 8 years, I can't tell you how many hotel reservations calls I've heard. As one of the specialties of Customer Direct is central reservations for hotels all across the world. Everyone can book online today for just about any hotel, right? And you have multiple channels to do that. But people have questions. They have questions about the cancellation policy, which is in that process of online booking, but they have a question. They want to hear it from a person, or they want to ask about the parking, or they want to ask if they can get a room that's away from the elevators. or they want a connecting room because they're getting 2 rooms and they're bringing their kids. Like, there are just all these different reasons that people are not willing to complete the transaction online and self-serve. And so they make a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just critical that you know what to expect. Like, workforce management teams are amazing at forecasting when they have all the relevant information. And if your marketing team doesn't provide all the relevant information, then it's a disaster. That's what it is. And so that communication is the key to success. When everybody knows what everybody else is doing and they're going to do it and what to expect, then we can all be successful.
Yeah. Actually, I really love that example because I'm one of those rare people of my age who would prefer to speak to somebody. I'd prefer to do everything online if I can. But I was in that situation where I was booking 2 hotel rooms, and because we were bringing one of our kids with us, and we wanted to make sure we had an attached room or at least close by. And so with that example, what I'm starting to see, because we always talk about it's a circular motion, right, between marketing, sales, and customer service. If you're like in the hotel business and you suddenly, from your contact center, you suddenly realize that, every second call, exaggerating, is about, do you have connecting rooms? Then that's really good information to get back to marketing to say, by the way, marketing, let's update the website and how people can book and actually add a SKU for connecting rooms, because you do find that on some hotel websites and many others you don't, right? The fact that they have connecting rooms. So it's a really good example of where if they're working together in alignment and they're sharing this really valuable customer data, they can keep improving the customer experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Revenue management in the hotel world is no different than revenue management in SaaS or in anything else. It is about understanding what questions your customers have that are preventing them from moving forward, what things I can provide them up front to help them make a decision or move forward in the process. And the website of a hotel can absolutely provide that information, and knowing how often questions come up and maybe where we can put that information to be more prominent, because it might be there already. Maybe it just needs to be more prominently placed because we recognize that this comes up a lot.
Well, that brings me to my next question. How do you suggest people go about making those improvements to the customer experience? If we're using your hotel example, whether we're talking about a simple change to the website, or maybe it does require something more significant, like modifying your whole reservation process, or even implementing a new technology in order to do that, what are some things we should keep in mind?
I will tell you, one of the things that we really strive to do for our partners is to implement quickly. But the reality is it doesn't always work out that way. And having gone through many implementations of our own, we know that things take time to do them right anyway. And so it's always exciting when someone goes, wow, I can't believe how fast that happened. How did you get me up and running in less than a week? I love that. But you also have to be realistic that not every implementation goes that way. And not every tool that you choose to stand up is going to just work out of the box, because most of them don't. They don't work out of the box. Everything needs to be customized for your business. There may be some tools that do work out of the box. They're typically going to be simple and have relatively simple use cases. But when you start to talk about the things that are more complex, that solve complex challenges, those are not. You can't just sign up today and Monday morning, be off and running.
Flip the switch.
It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, that's, we hear that a lot. And the thing that I think a lot of us don't think about especially now we're sort of starting to talk a little bit about implementing the technology that's going to make our data, our processes, and our people all more effective, and start creating a better customer experience while also creating a better internal efficiency, is if your business is growing In other words, if you're adding people or you're adding customers, everything is changing, right? So if you're adding people, your processes need to change, your training needs to keep up with that. As technology, improvements are being made now literally on almost on an hourly basis, but we're as technology customers, we're seeing it on a daily basis now, where updates are being made to the software that we use every single day. So if the software is changing, if we're adding customers, if we're adding staff, then clearly this change is continuous and it needs to be revisited. It's almost, at least on a monthly basis, but I think it's almost weekly now. So, what new customer do we have? What new team member do we have? What technology updates do we have? And then how do we do the training to make sure everybody's up to speed so that we can continue to operate effectively and continue to provide that great customer experience we don't come across a lot of businesses who are not trying to improve or maintain a high level of customer experience.
Yeah, when you think about the technology based off of growth, like there tend to be certain breakpoints where I can use a particular technology until I get to X size. And then all of a sudden, the complexity increases. I need something that is more scalable. It's probably also going to be more expensive, but that comes with the territory. And so the average support team in a startup is probably one or two people, right? You have one or two people handling support, service, what have you. And they can get by with some pretty basic tools. When you get to 5 to 10 people supporting those customers, now all of a sudden I got to change. I got to pivot. I got to use something that is a little more complex. My tools have to grow with the business. When I get to 25 to 50, now all of a sudden, again, I need to pivot again. I need to have something that can scale differently. And that holds true across all of these different functions. I can start with Notion as a CRM at a certain level. But there comes a time when that's not going to scale anymore, and we need something that can handle a lot more. And I might have to go to a HubSpot or something along those lines. So it really is a continuous pattern of evaluating where are we as a business today? How well are our tools supporting us? Where do we anticipate we're going to be as a business in a month to 6 months? And what tools do we need to be considering that might need to be replaced or just added to the mix? I don't know that I would look out more than 6 months, quite honestly. In this environment, it's hard to plan anything in 6 months. But understanding when I need to evaluate or potentially add some things is really important, because that's also not just part of generating more revenue, but understanding how is this going to impact my margins. All of a sudden, I know, hey, when we get here, we're really going to have to splurge on this new tool, and it's going to cost us more money. Okay. As long as we understand that, we can plan for it, and we recognize how that impacts the bottom line, then, we can move forward with that or make a decision at least as to whether or not that makes sense for us. And I think some businesses are loath to reevaluate their technology, their processes, and quite honestly, their people, because it's just easier to keep the status quo than to say, you know what, this isn't working for us anymore. It worked 6 months ago, but it doesn't work today. And we need to make a change so that we can continue to grow as a business
and evolve. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's something that we really have to do. And I was just thinking, as you were saying that, the difference between a company that has 50 people versus a company that has 200 people or 500 or 750, they all have the same challenge, but the bigger the company, typically and the longer they've been around. So the bigger ones typically have been around for longer. The more technology they've essentially adopted over the years. And so, tech bloat has become a very common thing. So part of every implementation that we do, the very first step is, which when we're trying to figure, okay, what do you currently have today and kind of what does the ideal future state look like, is doing that tech stack audit, because I think that the average number of tools now is up to about 57, across in one business, across marketing, sales, and customer service, and then integrating with maybe an ERP or something on the back office side. And in most cases, you probably can narrow that down to whether it's 17 or 27 or 37. And it's not just the cost, it's the inefficiency that comes from jumping from one tool to the next. And of course, a lot of these tools are doing the same thing. And the person who bought tool number 43 didn't know that the person who bought tool number 23 was doing it for a very similar reason. So you have these redundant systems that you don't need. But anyway, so it's a really tricky problem because, of course, and that's the double-edged sword of this amazing evolution of technology right now that is just at a breakneck speed, is that you suddenly find yourself with too many tools that you think are going to fix some of the things upstream, like your data or your processes or your people challenges around training and communication. But, the technology is not going to fix that for you.
Right.
But it's still something that you have to figure out.
You know what it reminds me of is I cut the cord in 2016, I think. I had DirecTV and I was like, I'm done with this. And I got 2 services at the time and an over-the-air antenna. There weren't that many streaming services at the time, but they keep launching, right?
Right. In 2016, yeah.
And there are lots of people that have signed up for service after service after service. They have no idea what they're paying for. They probably don't use half of what they are paying for. And honestly, the experience, number one, right? I'm switching apps to find shows. And some of these TVs, I got to tell you, we got a TV in our living room that has been around long enough that it's had enough updates that now it struggles at times because, quite honestly, it doesn't have enough RAM anymore. And we have to make sure that we're culling the cache on apps that we don't have apps installed that we're not using and evaluating what it is that we're actually watching and using. Part of it is about the money. Part of it is about the experience with the actual hardware. And part of it's about the experience of actually finding something to watch. Like it used to be you just scrolled through channels and, you might have 200 channels, but you kind of had an idea where things were laid out. And you're like, well, I can skip the 50s because there's nothing I ever watched there. And I can skip the 60s, but in the 70s, there's a few channels I like there. You can't do that anymore. Now, not only do I have to choose which app that I want to go into or potentially multiple apps, but the choices are so prevalent. It's not, these are the things that are on right now and you pick what you want to watch. There's a million different things that you can search for and choose. And so I feel like technology...
But not through one dashboard, right?
Right, not through one dashboard. And technology is like that. And to your point, maybe your kids signed up for this service over here, and maybe your spouse signed up for that service over there. And so you don't even know all of what you have or why you have it. And there may be competing services that basically do the same thing. And technology is like that in companies. You've got all of these business units that go, oh, well, we need this for this particular purpose. And so they get it. They don't really share it outside of their business unit. And then some other business unit basically wants to solve the same challenge, but they choose a different tool. So they're using a different tool. And then you get this other business unit over here, and they, again, are trying to solve a similar challenge. And so they get a tool, and they've got 3 tools all essentially doing the same thing. And that also becomes a problem because people don't like change. So they start using a tool, they like that tool, and then you come in and you try to unify that into a single tool, and people are like, no, don't take this away from me. I really like it. That's where you really have to have that critical evaluation of the tools that you're using across your organization, what they're being used for, so that you don't end up with 5 different business units using 5 different tools to do the same thing, especially if they don't communicate well with each other or with other systems.
Yeah. I mean, that what you're essentially talking about is something that is, again, it's part of what we call our 3 uniques. We run on the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, and which is the whole cross-functional nature of business today, right? Which, again, if you're over the age of 40 or more, and maybe even a little bit younger, when you started in businesses were siloed, right? And the exact example that you were using, on the home entertainment side, the same thing in business where, marketing, there's a marketing leader who could make decisions around their tools, a sales leader, a CS leader, and of course across the entire business. But now these technologies run completely cross-functionally through the entire business. But the way that the leaders of the individual divisions or departments, they're still making decisions based on budget, right? So their team comes to them and says, oh, well, this is only $20 per user per month, and this is $29 per user per month. And it's like, oh, well, we have the budget for that. Yeah, sure, go ahead and do it. But then, you end up with your situation when finally somebody, if they have a director of IT or CTO or whatever gets involved, or the CFO is often where it starts when they're looking at the cost of software, and they're like, holy, we have 187 different pieces of software that we're paying for on a monthly, quarterly, or annual basis. Are we using all these things? And then that's where the cross-functional investigation begins. And you end up with where you ended, which was like, why are you going to take away our tool that we love to use? Take it away from sales or marketing or whatever, But that's a very real thing that it's just part of the evolution of how, again, technology has impacted how businesses function and how people think, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very cool.
Do you have any insight that you could share about scaling a customer service team, for instance, to accommodate these, whether it's like fluctuations in volume that they're expecting, or the company is just growing really fast and needs to grow headcount? Like, how do you make sure that everyone is set up for success when you're in those periods of high growth?
Yeah. I mean, you just asked like the most loaded question in the world, Amy. So let's start with workforce, right? I mean, that's where it starts, understanding like, what does the future state look like? How many people do we need to support that future state, which then informs the recruiting and hiring department, which then informs the training department. And then you get into the operational aspect of it, because as you grow, you don't just grow headcount at that frontline level. You have to grow headcount at your supervisor level to support those agents. And so there's a development process that ideally you have in place so that you're developing kind of that bench strength, so that when you have an opening for a new supervisor, you've got good group of individuals that already have a lot of the skills that you know that you're going to need. And that continues on up the chain depending on how big you get, right? So you may need more people at that next level, that manager or director level. The same holds true in training. If I'm a really small organization, maybe I can get away with one trainer. But if I'm going to go through a period of high growth, I need to identify potentially multiple people that can train the same thing or different departments, different specifics. I may have a lot of ongoing continuous training that I have to execute. Again, that goes back to workforce, knowing what are the different upskilling opportunities that we're going to have and how do I work that into the schedule. So there are so many different things that go into it. And it comes back to communication and planning. And it can at times be an opportunity to reach out for a partner. So you mentioned, some of these kind of ups and downs, these peaks. And those can be situations where an outsourced partner is a great solution, particularly when it comes to things that are seasonal. So
seasonality.
I'm going to go back to an example that we've already talked about today, and that's the hotel space. The high season is summer. That's when most hotels are at their peak occupancy. And in the winter, it's not as much. And that is partly because business travel is higher in the summer. But obviously, leisure travel is much higher in the summer. That's when the kids are out of school and we can go on vacation and all of these things, right? I may be able, as a hotel, to handle the call volume, the inquiries that are coming to me in the low season with my internal staff. But in the high season, it might just be too much because my internal staff are also taking care of my actual guests that are at the hotel. And so being able to have someone answer the phone while I'm checking in a line of 5 different guests is critical, because the reality is if I call and I'm getting ring, 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 or I'm on hold too long, unless I have my heart set on that particular hotel, I might move on to the next one. And so then you lose a sale. And having an outsource partner that can absorb that volume for you without you having to hire additional staff and then potentially let go of additional staff can be a great solution. It may not be the best solution for every hotel operation, but it can be a really good solution, particularly when you have drastic changes in your seasonality. So that is one way that you can approach that, is just understanding what's my core business? What are the things that we're really good at? And should we consider looking at someone to help us fill some of these things that aren't part of our core business and they're really good at it? Certainly that's something that I think more companies should consider. And actually, I shouldn't say that. Almost every company considers that, but they often consider it from a cost perspective. I can save money if I don't hire people, and they're not considering it from just how will this impact my business, having a partner that is better at this particular aspect of the business than I am and can handle this overflow in a way that maybe I can't handle it. That's how I think most businesses should look at outsourcing. It's not always how they do it, but if they did, I think they would find that they get better experiences for their customers.
But of course, that's also directly, ultimately the one way to get the attention of business leaders in that situation is you have to do the numbers for them, right? Which is, what is the cost of a poor customer experience, both in the short term, like, in other words, for this year's revenue, but also, we hear about more and more businesses measuring LTV, lifetime value of a customer. It's been in the SaaS space for as long as SaaS has been around, but it's filtering through all other industries now. The importance of LTV, and again, it's directly related to customer experience, because if a customer has that bad experience, for example, using that hotel analogy again, where that particular hotel owner decided not to outsource to someone who could do a really good job of handling the excess volume during the high season, all the customers who called and had a poor experience are probably not going to call that hotel ever again. So they've lost those customers. But as we know, those customers also have friends and family that they talk to. They're definitely going to be talking to their friends and family about the hotel that they did end up at and had a good experience at. And there's also a chance that they might talk about the hotel that they would never go to because they didn't have a very good experience. But
yeah, there are so many decisions that we make that are informed by other people's experiences in a way that was not the case 20 years ago. NPS as a metric is designed to understand, would you recommend this, right? It is ultimately that social recommendation question. That's what it's getting at.
Yeah.
But that social recommendation used to have a really limited reach. It was my close friends and my family and maybe some people that I worked with. And then beyond that, it didn't really go anywhere. And today, Amazon.
You weren't influenced by strangers on the internet.
Absolutely. Like Amazon and Google, like they totally changed the game. And so whether it's a restaurant, a hotel, a product that you're buying, it doesn't matter. People will look at reviews. And some people will look at reviews with a really pinch of salt and take into consideration that most bad reviews are, the tail end. But other people are not necessarily going to look at it that way. And some people are very reactionary about whatever it is and will post a bad review for something that could have been easily solved. And again, this goes back to that service recovery in the contact center. If you aren't recovering at that moment when they call in and they're upset or they're dissatisfied, you're just losing out. And it probably will end up in a review somewhere, because there is nothing like posting that review to just get it off your chest.
Stick it to them.
1 star. And the review starts out with, I wish I could give it 0 stars.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I guess we could keep going on that one too. It's there's a lot there, but I'm not going to go there.
Well, what if we wrapped it up, because we are at our hour, and I want to be respectful of your time. But what if we wrapped it up with something that you think customer service leaders should either start doing to prepare for the future, or if you see people doing something wrong that maybe is hindering them, what should they stop doing, or both?
I mean, there are a number of different things. I think the most important thing that customer service leaders need to be aware of today is, while people are rushing to implement technology to actually interact with a customer, I mean, there are a lot of AI solutions that do that. You need to be clear on the implications of doing that within your organization. There are some incredible use cases where it makes sense. If I'm a global organization and I have customers in 50 different countries speaking 50 different languages, that's really hard to support without utilizing some of the technology that's out there. It's difficult and it's expensive. It can be done, but it's really hard. AI can really help there. But if you're a local company who services your local area, maybe it's your local pest control company, really focus on developing your people and giving yourself tools that help you and aid in that effort. Because your customers probably don't want to talk to a bot. They don't want to talk to a virtual agent. They want to talk to a person, right? They want to talk to Amy, or they want to talk to Brendan. But when they get to Amy or Brendan, they want that person to be able to take care of them, to take care of their needs, to answer their questions, and being able to do that quickly, doing it the right way, and doing it with a smile. That's what customers ultimately want. Just take care of my problem quickly, be nice about it, and do it right, please, so I don't have to call back. And there are all kinds of technologies that can help you in that effort, and you should be aware of all the different interesting things that are out there. There are lots of cool technologies, but I caution people in rushing headlong into, well, we're just going to get rid of all of our agents because AI is going to answer all the questions for us. Okay, AI might also sell your pickup truck for $1. That's not going to turn out well. AI might give the wrong answer, and all of a sudden you go to court, and the court's saying, hey, yeah, you're responsible for what your chatbot said, and you need to pay this person. Those are really easy examples to point to, but I do think they're examples that demonstrate rushing to replace the people is not always the best answer, but using technology to empower your people can create an incredible experience. It can also help you potentially reduce some costs. And so if you're trying to say, you know what, our customer service team, they're certainly important, but we always like to spend less on things like that. They're There are tools that can help you. There are companies that can help you. Investigate those, but understand what your ultimate goals are. What is the reason that you're investigating this? Is it just to save money? Are you trying to improve customer experience? Are you trying to cut costs, drive revenue? What is it? Because knowing that will help you make the right decision, or at least a decision that aligns with what you're trying to accomplish. I think far too often people make decisions that aren't actually in alignment with what they're trying to accomplish. They may think they are, but they're not. And every change that you make is going to have unintended consequences. We all know that. And understanding the potential consequences is really important. It's as important now as it ever was.
Did you enjoy this episode?
Find more at RevOpsChampions.com.